Hi everybody, welcome to this video which provides an overview and analysis of Aldous Huxley's novel Brave New World. There are two great mid-20th century dystopian British novels. In one of them, George Orwell's 1984, the state maintains control through surveillance, terror, and violence. In the other one, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, the state maintains control through science. In its analysis of how the sciences of the present could be combined in ways that create a dehumanized society in the future, Brave New World emblematizes the value of imaginative narrative as a strategy for conceptualizing the implications of scientific discoveries and technological innovations. The science that Brave New World fictionalizes is often said to be genetic engineering. For example, it says this in one of the blurbs on the back of my copy of the book. But it's not. Embryos are artificially fertilized and manipulated, but Huxley didn't know anything about genes, nor did anyone else in 1932. The opening chapters of the book provide a guided tour of the procedures used by the state-run Hatchery and Conditioning Center, introducing us to the assembly line style process used to create large batches of identical twins, making these groups more efficient teams of workers, manipulating the fetal environment to differentiate them into 5 separate categories of humans differentiated by physical and intellectual capacity, and then to brainwash them with subconscious beliefs that support the ideology of the world state and that reinforce their sense of belonging to their caste. The relevant sciences are embryology, behavioral conditioning, and factory logistics. Whereas the society of 1984 was designed to terrify everyone into submission, the society of Brave New World controls people by keeping them happy. Everyone knows their plates, everyone fits into their assigned role, and a steady stream of other techno-social innovations, immersive movies, weekly communal orgies, elaborate recreational sports, synthetic pop music, and of course Soma, the feel-good drug of the future, ensures that no one ever feels the kind of pain, resentment, isolation, or outrage that would disturb the smooth functioning of this mass society. Well, almost no one. Alphas, the social group whose development was least degraded by the fertilization and conditioning process, still have enough individuality and critical thinking skills to sometimes feel out of step with a society devoted to diversions and anesthetized happiness. We meet Bernard Marx, for example, who has crazy ideas about wanting to spend time alone with his coworker Lenina, going for walks and talking, for instance. This desire is completely at odds with the ethos of his society, which believes that people should never be alone, that things like nature and conversations are pointless because they don't do anything to stimulate the economy, and that any desires to the contrary are antisocial and even vaguely obscene. Lenina does not hesitate to tell Bernard that he is a deviant for feeling otherwise. Bernard's best friend, Helmholtz Watson, is a successful writer of jingles that are used to brainwash young people. There is some part of him that feels unfulfilled. He has a vague impression that there must be something more meaningful that he could be doing with his writing talents, but he can't imagine what it might be, since society has banished the memory of literature. Even the director of the Fertilization and Conditioning Center, we learn, who is presented in the opening chapters as the very face of the fertilization and conditioning industry, turns out to have had some youthful indiscretions where he fell in love with a woman, took her to a savage reservation, and then felt grief when she mysteriously disappeared without a trace. This is all wrong for the society of Brave New World, where romantic love is considered to be a sick perversion, the savage reservations should only be considered as tourist sites, and people are conditioned at an early age to not have any personal attachment for other individual people or to feel any sadness about death or loss. The savage reservations are barren parts of the earth where human beings continue to live in the old way. They reproduce sexually, they live in families, and they believe in various gods. They also suffer from disease, starvation, and exposure to the elements, providing a kind of warning for modern people about what life was like before science solved the problem of human misery and dysfunction. Modern people are invited to visit the savage reservations the way first worlders go on safari or visit zoos. But when Bernard decides to take Lenina there, his motivations seem to be rooted in his malaise about the so-called utopia he inhabits. Shortly after arriving on the reservation, Bernard and Lenina meet Linda and John, who turn out to be the woman that the director had lost decades ago and the son she was pregnant with. Linda's reliance on the conveniences of Brave New World society make her unsuited for life as a savage, and she and her son are ostracized by the savages as well. These hardships, however, have helped John develop into a strong, sensitive, and thoughtful young person. He has taught himself to read with the two available books on the reservation, one of which is the complete works of William Shakespeare. When Bernard offers to arrange to have John and Linda brought back to society, John quotes a line from Shakespeare's The Tempest: "Brave new world that hath such people in it." His mother's stories of helicopters and skyscrapers and a world where everyone's happy all the time have made civilization sound impossibly beautiful and good. After a while of living in this society, however, these words begin to take on an ironic edge. While Linda is dying of a soma overdose, a swarm of identical children intrudes into John's grief. The children are being death conditioned to train them to think of death as just another biological process, and the nurses scold John since his unseemly bereavement threatens to disrupt this important educational experience. In this moment, John is suddenly struck by a sense of how monstrous these future people are in their cloned replication of one another, in their disregard for the very emotions and experiences that make us human, and mostly in their bland acceptance of their inane society as self-evidently just and rational. John dismisses the utopian fantasies he's had about what this world would be like, concluding that the kind of people in this brave new world are loathsome, nightmarish, and infantile. He eventually flees society and attempts to live as a hermit in an abandoned lighthouse, where he will commit himself to a regime of deprivation and self-flagellation in pursuit of all the human values that the brave new world has attempted to eliminate. His hermitage is soon invaded, however, by paparazzi and crowds of novelty seekers who mock John's attempts to cultivate an authentic humanity by reducing it to a joke and a spectacle. Ultimately, John concludes that the only way out is suicide. By the end of the story, John is dead, while Bernard, Helmholtz, and the director have been exiled. Society has protected itself by expunging dissent and learned nothing. One of the audacious jokes of Brave New World is the manner in which the society of the future conflates two worldviews which 20th century readers generally held to be fundamentally opposed: communism and capitalism. By the 1930s, the contestation between proponents of communism, the belief that resources should be held by all people in common, and capitalism, the belief that the accumulation of private property is an individual right, have dominated national and international political discourse. Huxley's novel characterizes both systems as basically equivalent, their superficial differences concealing the fact that they are both systems designed to control masses of people. In Brave New World, capitalist-style activities like leisure sports and mass consumption serve the same function as communist-style activities like group sings and solidarity services. Huxley suggests that both ideologies are mirror images of one another, and even that they come to a lot of the same conclusions. In the ideological extremes of both communism and capitalism, monogamistic relationships are anachronisms and even subversive. Communism is averse to monogamy because it implies an ethos of ownership. Capitalism is averse to monogamy because it implies an unprofitable withholding of a resource from the open market. But to Savage John, and to some extent for Bernard Marx, monogamy effectuates a gradient of meaning that creates a space for human struggle. Huxley also suggests that communism and capitalism both feel the same way about God. Communists don't like God because it introduces into social reality something that transcends the authority of the state. Capitalists don't like God because it introduces something that transcends the imperatives and incentives of consumer activity. Similarly, in Huxley's satirical future, communists don't like the past because it suggests alternative ways of thinking and feeling that elude the power of the state to control or domesticate. Capitalists don't like the past because it keeps people from buying new things. But maybe the biggest horror of Brave New World is the prospect that human consciousness is so manipulable. We think we love our mothers and fear death and think of sex as a private, intimate activity because these are elemental, inalienable traits of our being. But with a little application of the science of behavioral conditioning, we can be taught to feel that mother and father are dirty words. Organized religion is also represented as being a tool of the state for ideological indoctrination. The premise that our Lord can be replaced with our Ford, or sometimes our Freud, that the top can be chopped off a cross to make it a symbol of the sacred Model T automobile. This all entails that organized religion itself is just a corporate scam perpetrated by social engineers to pacify and hypnotize mass audiences. Of course, in the decade that Huxley wrote Brave New World, Italian and German styles of fascism seem to be working toward a similar synthesis, actively engineering societies premised on the kinds of collective rituals that Bernard Marx attends. The community sings, the solidary service, the feelies, obstacle golf, in the form of Nazi rallies, book burnings, and coordinated outbursts of anti-Semitic violence. Developmental biopsychological conditioning must have seemed to Huxley like the last piece of the puzzle. The trick was to take this unruly and passion-prone thing called a human being, edit out the troublesome bits, the family drama, the romance, the hopeless yearnings. On the one hand, a reader of the novel can take heart in the idea that it requires such an elaborate regime of fertilization and conditioning to engineer the humanity out of human beings, and even then, malcontents like Bernard and Helmholtz still crop up. On the other hand, Bernard and Helmholtz have no prospect of actually doing anything to alter their society. They are glad simply to escape it. John kills himself, and the fertilization and conditioning clinic continues to churn out the neutered and brainwashed human cattle of the future.